Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alyson Grange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global South. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Donald Trump suggests the US would strike again if Iran rebuilds nuclear program, but claims recent strikes caused total obliteration of Iran's nuclear capabilities, setting the program back by decades. Japan lodges official protest as it claims China is building a new structure in the disputed East China Sea. Beijing denies the accusation, insists oil and gas activities are within its jurisdiction. A US commercial mission carrying a crew from India, Poland and Hungary blasts off to the International Space Station, taking astronauts from these countries to space for the first time in decades. German police launched nationwide operation targeting online hate speech, focusing on those suspected of inciting hostility towards social groups and insulting politicians. And a landslide triggered by heavy rains kills at least 10 and injures 15 near the Colombian city of Medellin. Locals are warned to evacuate as search and rescue operations continue. Hello and welcome. We start with Kenya. It is marking the one-year anniversary of the anti-tax protests, with more protests. Now, what started as a tax uprising has come full circle. It is a renewed warning to William Ruto's government that the fight is not over yet. Thousands have taken to the streets across Kenya, marking 1 year since a wave of anti-government demonstrations, and it reached the peak point when Kenyans stormed the parliament. Now, as police opened fire on protesters, and today's demonstrations come amid heavy security deployment, anti-riot police blocked access to Nairobi's central business district. Police used tear gas and water cannons to disperse the crowds in certain parts. At least 2 protesters are reportedly dead from gunshots and several others injured. Some young protesters waved Kenyan flags and held placards of the demonstrators killed last year, chanting, "Ruto must go." They also set up makeshift barricades on the streets. Some of them even charged on police.
Today is a day for us youths, revolution. We are fighting for the rights of the fellow youths and our Kenyans.
Who died?
And there are people who died since 25th June.
Who killed?
And then I think it's last week, Ojwang died. So we want justice.
For me, today means that revolution is coming to Kenya, and I pray that this is a day that will change everything, that Ruto will go today.
Kenyan authorities have ordered media to stop live coverage of the protests. Activists and victims' families called for peaceful demonstrations to mark the deadliest day of unrest last year, when the parliament was breached and at least 19 people were killed. However, some even called to occupy State House, which is President William Ruto's official office in Nairobi. The Interior Ministry warned protesters not to provoke police or attempt to breach protected areas. Many schools and businesses remain closed in anticipation of violence.
A right to demonstrate. We have a right. They want to kill us. You see what they did to us? Yeah, we all on them. Go to State House.
Anti-government protests and rallies have become a routine in Kenya since last June. Public dissent has grown louder. Last year's uprising was sparked by proposed tax hikes, which the president was later forced to roll back. But police brutality has also surged. More than 60 people killed in the violence last year. And during last year's demonstrations, Kenya is not just mourning their deaths, but also the 31-year-old blogger Albert Ojwang, who died this month in police custody after criticizing the deputy police chief. Now, that officer has since stepped aside pending investigation. 6 people, including 3 other police officers, have been charged with murder in connection with his death. Last week, a peaceful march was attacked by a gang of motorbike-riding goons, armed with whips and clubs and allegedly backed by police. A joint statement by Western embassies, including those of the US, the UK and Germany, condemned the use of hired thugs to disrupt peaceful protests. The unrest reflects deeper anger toward President Ruto, who came to power in 2022, promising economic transformation. This year, his government has tried to avoid direct tax increases, but accusations of human rights abuses have mounted. Rights groups say that over 80 government critics have disappeared since last year. Dozens are still missing, raising fears of a return to Kenya's authoritarian past from the 1980s and 90s. President Ruto has promised to end abductions in the past, but on Tuesday he took a harder line, vowing to stand by the police amid the latest wave of protests. How could the latest unrest shape Kenya's political future? Now, for more on this, we have with us Stella Agara, a governance and security analyst who is joining us live from Nairobi. Thank you for being with us, Stella.
Thank you for having me.
Now, what underlying socio-political and economic factors contribute to drive such widespread public discontent in Kenya, despite a year having passed since the initial unrest?
There are a number of issues, Alyson. Initially, when the protest started last year, it was just about the finance bill and discontent from the citizens about some of the tax changes that the government was planning to make. Ever since, a lot more has come on the list, and some of them were already mentioned in the protest last year, and they were part of the list of the issues that the protesters requested the president to act on. That includes runaway corruption, which is a big deal, unemployment, especially amongst the young people, and most of them being educated and unemployed because there are no opportunities for employment. Definitely big on the list right now is an unresponsive government. If you listen to all Kenyans, they're saying this government just does not listen to Kenyans. They don't want to hear what Kenyans want to say. They're insisting on advancing development plans that Kenyans have already told them they are not interested in, but for some reason they have taken a position that they will continue doing what they must do and they will not be distracted. There's shrinking political space, and I think this is the biggest factor that has brought the young people on the streets, especially today, because this right to assemble, to associate, to protest is actually a right guaranteed by our constitution, and this government is hell-bent on ensuring that citizens do not exercise that right, even when they come out peaceably to exercise the right. Of course, I've mentioned the finance bill, and it's not just a finance bill, but basically retrogressive economic development plans that the government has been trying to implement. The fact that they insist on trying to implement economic plans, but then they are robbing citizens of the gains that they had already made from previous governments, including things like free primary, secondary education. They have now removed all that, and instead they're giving politicians bursaries to give to Kenyans, and hoping that Kenyans will line up to beg for bursaries, and of course investing that money in a random and a disorganized empowerment program, which they call community empowerment, that is not benefiting anyone directly or in an organized manner. And of course, they are robbing more people out of the education system. Extrajudicial killings and police brutality is a trigger for today's protest, especially because we've had recent deaths in the police issues, and Kenyans are saying enough is enough.
Right. On that, Stella, how significant is the death of the blogger Albert Ojwang, in reigniting this national outrage? And what does this incident reveal about freedom of expression and political dissent in Kenya today?
I think this particular incident has really triggered anger amongst the citizens of Kenya. One of the things that I've observed yesterday, and I've been conversing with everyone about, is the fact that the fear is gone. If there was any fear that had settled in the spirits of the young people, today they really just don't care. They've been all out there and advancing in the protest. I think the last footage that I watched, they had actually gotten close to State House Girls High School, which is a school that is very close to State House. There's an unsettlement that Gen Z have, and they really do not care anymore about what they have to get through to be able to deal with the situation. I think there's also people who are taking advantage, for example, because we have one of the law courts in the country that has been burnt to ashes. There are certain MPs' homes that have also been raised under fire. And this is possibly because of the responsible political pronouncements by politicians who are linked to the government, that have insisted on instigating, constantly attacking the citizens, being rude towards the citizens, ignoring the needs of the citizens, and speaking to them with an attitude of what will you do, even if we don't act on your demands. So this is emboldening the young generation. It is offending the citizen of Kenya tremendously, and it is pushing the different institutions that are responsible for maintaining the rule of law and constitutionalism in Kenya to the edge, because the Law Society of Kenya has been seen commenting, the police look like they were overwhelmed many times today. So this is really straining the environment, and there's a definite attack on freedom of expression, because the media today has been attacked by the Communication Authority. They have taken shut down signals from 2 media stations as of now, and they have actually denied them a chance to do live coverage, which is definitely against the laws of Kenya.
And Stella, just quickly, with the memory still fresh from the police's lethal response last year, what are the implications or potential implications, both domestically and internationally, if authorities respond violently again?
I think one of the things that I foresee is international media protection agencies also coming to the defense of local media. It's not possible to have this kind of an event in the country and decide that you will not allow the media to air freely. So there's the issue of the attack on freedom of expression will definitely be an issue that the international media watchdogs will be watching out for. The other thing is the human rights organizations globally are watching Kenya very closely. Several embassies have done a joint statement demanding that the government allows citizens to protest freely and commemorate the lives that were lost in last year's protest. But for some reason, the government has chosen violence today. And so there'll definitely be consequences to this. And of course, it also impacts on the confidence of investors and people who probably would have been thinking about traveling to Kenya, either to visit for tourism or whatever reasons. I think locally, one of the things that is going to happen, and I am afraid that maybe the president and his government have set themselves up is that these young people will not get tired of protesting, because one of the things I've realized is that they have nothing to lose and they have plenty of time in their hands, and they are resolute that they're going to take back their country from the hands of an oppressive government. The other thing that I see happening very soon, because our constitution allows for it, is some of these politicians actually being held to account, because in the last couple of days we've seen systematic unleashing of goons on protesters, and some of them have injured protesters, one of whom is in critical condition in hospital right now. And I know if he's announced dead, there will be even more problems in the hands of the government. I think there is quite a strain on the resources. The economy is struggling, and this is not something that should be happening if only the government would actually pay attention to what the citizens are saying.
Right. Stella, thank you very much for being with us on First Post Africa.
Thank you for having me.
And staying with Kenya, the East African nation is accused of channeling weapons into Sudan. The army-backed Sudanese government has alleged that Kenya funneled weapons from the United Arab Emirates to Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces, or the RSF. The Sudanese Foreign Ministry said that Kenya is one of the main sources of the Emirati military supplies to the RSF. The allegations came after the army uncovered Kenyan-labelled arms and ammunition. These were allegedly recovered in the RSF militia's weapon caches in the capital, Khartoum. The Sudan government and Kenya have been at loggerheads over its readiness to host RSF leaders. In February this year, the paramilitary RSF and its allies signed a charter in Kenya to establish a rival government against the one backed by the Sudanese army. Now, the response in Sudan government has imposed a ban on imports from Kenya in March, and the Sudanese Foreign Ministry claims that Kenya has admitted that the UAE is arming the RSF in a bid to seize the North African nation's natural resources and to establish a foothold on the Red Sea. But that's just one side of a long smear war. Both the warring sides have traded accusations. For months, the Sudanese army and the RSF have blamed each other. They say the arms flow is coming from foreign powers. The usual partakers include the UAE, Egypt, Iran, Turkey, and Russia. Foreign powers seem to be playing a key role in Sudan's civil war. The army has long relied on Egypt's support, but since the war started in 2023, it drew closer ties with Turkey, Iran, and Russia. Now, it severed ties with the UAE in March of this year, declaring it an aggressor state. The army-backed government accuses the UAE of using the RSF as a proxy to attack Sudan. The UAE is accused of arming the RSF through Sudan's neighboring nations, Chad, Libya, and now Kenya. Claims backed by several UN experts, US lawmakers, and international organizations. However, Abu Dhabi has denied these accusations. The United Nations chief, Antonio Guterres, has repeatedly raised alarm over the involvement of foreign players. He has warned that external powers against fueling the fire in the war-torn country, while calling for an end to foreign arms deliveries to both the warring parties. Sudan is reeling under a crisis that stemmed from a war between Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and his former deputy, the RSF commander Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo. It has triggered the world's largest displacement crisis. Millions have been uprooted and tens of thousands have died. It has almost become a feeding ground for those who seek to benefit from the country's rich oil, gold, iron ore, and natural gas reserves. By aiding either of the warring sides, meanwhile, the fierce fighting on the ground continues abated. The war is becoming a regional standoff, and with Kenya's name involved, the list of outside players is only growing. Our next story is from South Africa, which has signed 2 key agreements with India in the domain of a submarine cooperation. Now, an Indian defense delegation was in South Africa for the 9th Joint Defense Committee, or the JDC, meeting. It was held in Johannesburg on the 23rd and the 24th of June. The Indian delegation was led by Defence Secretary Rajesh Kumar Singh, while the South African side was headed by Acting Secretary for Defence Tobekile Gamede. Now, during the high-level meeting, the two sides exchanged two agreements on submarine cooperation, signalling a stronger push toward enhanced naval partnership. While the details of the agreements have not been disclosed, they fall under two major JDC subcommittees: the Defence Policy and Military Cooperation, and Defence Acquisition, Production, Research and Development. Now, this builds on existing naval ties between the two countries. In September of 2024, the two sides had signed a submarine rescue agreement allowing India to deploy its deep submerged rescue vehicles, aid South African submarines in distress, and it was a landmark step in enhancing maritime safety and mutual support. During the latest talks, the Indian Defence Secretary highlighted India's rising capabilities in defence manufacturing and exports, and he also reiterated India's commitment to deepening ties with South Africa, a relationship rooted in shared history of struggle against colonialism. Defence ties between the two countries date back to 1996 and have continued to expand, particularly in the naval domain. Since 2008, India, Brazil and South Africa have regularly conducted the IB Samar trilateral naval exercises, and the 8th edition took place in October last year in South Africa, with the Indian Navy ships like the INS Talwar taking part in anti-submarine warfare, surface operations and boarding exercises. South Africa also took part in the inaugural Africa-India Key Maritime Engagement, which was held off the coast of Tanzania in April of this year. It featured 9 African nations and included anti-piracy, search and rescue and helicopter drills. India has also deployed defence attachés to multiple African nations, including South Africa, as a part of a broader strategy to deepen defence and strategic ties across the continent. South Africa is considered a key partner in India's security and growth for all in the region, or the Sagar Initiative. It aims to strengthen maritime security in the Indian Ocean region. Strategically located at the Cape of Good Hope, South Africa controls one of the world's most critical maritime choke points, linking the Indian Ocean with the South Atlantic. Now, this makes it vital to India's energy trade and shipping routes, and New Delhi remains committed to deepen this partnership. And moving on to some news from the East African nation of Uganda, where the long-running president, Yoweri Museveni, is set to seek his 7th term in office. His party, the National Resistance Movement, or the NRM, has now confirmed him as its presidential candidate, and his announcement was much along the expected lines, as the 80-year-old was widely expected to seek re-election in the polls scheduled for January of next year. Museveni has been in office since 1986. That's almost 4 decades in power. He rose to power after an armed uprising. His party has changed the Ugandan constitution twice in the past to allow him to extend his rule. With this, he has become Africa's 4th longest ruling leader. Museveni, once hailed for his commitment to good governance and developmental changes, but now his regime is marred by the accusations of crushing opposition and compromising independent institutions. Similar accusations shadowed Museveni's victory in the 2021 election as well. Now, there were widespread reports of irregularities and severe violence by security forces. Adding to that, Museveni faces allegations of cracking down on opposition. Museveni defeated his prominent opponent, Bobi Wine, in 2021. The musician turned politician, whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi, has announced his intent to also run for the 2026 election. The National Unity Platform leader has been arrested several times. He has faced charges of treason and illegal possession of firearms. Now, Museveni's son and heir apparent, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, has repeatedly threatened to behead him on social media. Now, last year, Museveni's other longtime electoral opponent, Kizza Besigye, was abducted in Kenya and brought to Uganda, and he is now facing the death penalty for treason. International rights groups have widely condemned charges against Besigye. His wife and UN AIDS Executive Director Winnie Byanyima claims that he had been detained for political reasons. According to her, Besigye is being criminalized because he decided to contest the elections. Museveni has multiple issues standing between him and his re-election bid, starting from corruption to human rights violations to the refugee crisis to accusations of crushing opposition. The list is long. Now, with little time left to clean his image, both domestically and globally, will the Ugandan president be able to hold on to power? We will keep track for you. And that's it on the show for today. We'll see you again at the same time tomorrow. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
It's over! He's done it again! Unbelievable!
Oh, straight into the roof of the net.
Nice one!
Straight down the middle.
Hi, you're watching First Sports. I'm Rupa Ramani. Let's get started.